Zarzaur and Dr. Malone here for another segment of Zarzaur Law TV. February is National Heart Month. We're going to talk about heart attacks. Dr. Malone is going to talk about the risk factors, and if you have risk factors, what the symptoms might be. And then I'm going to talk about any legal issues that could come up related to the diagnosing of a heart condition or failure to diagnose, and then the treatment of a heart symptom, a heart attack symptom, and the failure to treat. So Doc, first let's talk about what is heart disease generically, and what are the symptoms?
Okay, so
risk factors first.
So heart disease, there's a whole litany of conditions, cardiac conditions that your cardiologist treats besides coronary artery disease. So coronary artery disease is probably the most common that's treated by cardiologists and even primary care doctors nowadays. So we'll focus on that.
Okay.
So coronary artery disease, or heart attack as most people will hear it, or angina. They're kind of interchangeable, though they're not exactly the same. So when you have angina, that's the symptoms of chest pain where you're not getting enough oxygen to the muscle of your heart. Your heart is supplied by coronary arteries. The blood supply comes off the aorta, and there's 3 coronary arteries. When any of those is blocked, you will feel symptoms of, hey, I'm having chest pain, shortness of breath, I feel dizzy, I'm nauseous, something doesn't feel right. Kind of like think about driving your car and you're stuck in the wrong gear almost. And it's important to note that it's at least 1 to 5 minutes worth of symptoms. It's not these little winces of pain where you turn real fast and, oh my God, I had chest pain, and you go to the ER. That's not the case. Physiologically, it's impossible for your heart to produce that kind of pain because of lack of blood flow, where it's in and out like that. It stays on. So when you hear the term, oh, it hit you like a heart attack, you'll know it, okay? So that's the heart attack part. Most people aren't going to not go to the ER when they're having a heart attack. I'm talking the big crushing heart attack. You're going to seek care somewhere. Now, the question is, when do you go when it's this, something doesn't feel right? That's angina, okay? And you may be having a heart attack on a molecular level. It's not the same where your heart muscle doesn't die, but it's heading there if you don't do something about it. So it's knowing these symptoms over a period of time to say, I need to get checked out so you don't have to end up in the ER emergently. You can go to your doctor and you can have a workup done in a more of a controlled setting, and your outcome may end up being the same in the long run, but you're doing it ahead of time before you come with that big crushing heart attack where you have sudden cardiac death.
Okay. And then from a legal standpoint, as you've been involved in some of these cases that we have looked at and evaluated here at the firm, first, obviously, what usually would happen is a family would come to us after somebody has passed away from a heart attack. And most of the time it relates to the care rendered once the symptoms are there, and whether the care was reasonable to address the heart attack symptoms once they were apparent. You have to establish not only that the care that was rendered to address the heart attack symptoms was negligent or wasn't reasonable, but you also have to prove that had the care been reasonable, that the person would have survived, more likely than not. So there's 2 things in a malpractice case you have to establish. Number 1, that the doctor was at fault or the caregiver was at fault. And then number 2, that fault actually caused the harm that you're saying was caused by this case. And in this example I gave you, it would be death from a heart attack. And you basically have to prove that but for that cause, but for that negligence, and if the person would have gotten reasonable medical intervention, reasonable medical care, they would have survived. So,
well, and to that point, so I've said this before, a physician's only as good as the information he or she is given. So you as a patient, you don't want to have to be calling Joe. You want to be in and out of the hospital or doctor's office with the diagnosis that's managed appropriately. So it's incumbent on you as a patient to understand some signs and some symptoms, the basic stuff, and that's the idea behind American Heart Month, okay, where you know your risks, you know the signs, you know the symptoms. Signs are what I see, okay? Symptoms are what you feel. So family members can see some signs, okay, when you're just not acting right, and yeah, you're showing symptoms of chest pain, or signs of chest pain,
shortness of breath.
Yeah, things like that. So you need to report those things. You need to also be open to your providers when they're asking questions about your risk factors, okay? So you're not going to get in trouble if you say, yeah, I smoke, but it helps them to decide what your best workup is. You're not going to get in trouble if you say, yeah, everybody in my family got heart attacks. that's very useful information, okay? So you need to report this information to the physicians or your care providers so that you can kind of be put into the correct pathway at the right time.
Very good advice. And if you have further questions or other questions about medical malpractice cases or National Heart Month or heart attack symptoms or signs, you can find us on the web at zarzaurlaw.com, or of course you can always call us at 855-HIRE-JOE. Thank you.